Hello, welcome, greetings. Welcome to our webinar today. We're really honored to have all of you join us for the role of mentoring in addressing the effects of community violence. I know everyone is getting into the room now, so as you come in, if you could just let us know in the chat where you're joining us from today. So just let us know where you're dialing in from. And we'll just wait a couple seconds for everybody to get in the room with us. Awesome, we have people from all over the country with us today. I'm Martha O'Connell. I'm with the National Mentoring Resource Center, and I'm really excited to have this amazing group of people with us today to discuss this really important topic. Again, the role of mentoring in addressing the effects of community violence. So as you can come in, you can let us know where you're calling in from. Wow, yeah, we have people joining from all over. So to participate in today's webinar, we really would love you to participate in as many ways as possible. Please stay muted for your own best sound quality on your end. If you have questions throughout our conversation, feel free to use the Q&A. You can really put questions in the Q&A box at any time, and we'll be queuing those up. And we'll get to as many as we can at the end of our conversation. Feel free to use the chat throughout our whole conversation today. You'll be able to talk to the other participants and to us. And if you would like live captions, you can click the CC button at the bottom of your screen. Good to know. We will be recording this entire webinar and sending out the PDF of all of the slides and actually even further information than is going to be presented today, because we do have a short time, but we want to get as much information as possible to all of you. So within a week, you will receive the recording and these slides, which you can forward to colleagues or whoever you think might benefit from this topic. And we'll also be posting this on the National Mentoring Resource Center website. So that will be available for years to come. Today, we're going to meet all of you with some quick polls. And then we are really honored to have U Chicago Crime Lab, Ready Chicago, and Choose to Change with us. They will be starting us off with sharing some key insights on this topic and some background context and some information on their programming. And we're going to get some really in-depth mentoring recommendations from UPMC Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh's ET3 program. We're then going to have a conversation with all of these incredible practitioners, mentors, program directors, and researchers. And we will get to as many of your questions as we can towards the end of that conversation. So again, if you have questions at any time, please put them in the Q&A box and we'll be monitoring that. Just for your information, this webinar is through the National Mentoring Resource Center and the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. So it is a collaboration between OJJDP, Office of Justice Programs, and the US Department of Justice. If you have not yet accessed all of our other resources on the National Mentoring Resource website, please visit it. We have lots of resources for mentoring programs of all different sizes. We have templates, resources, advice, a blog that includes anecdotes and recommendations from other programs across the country. So that's there all the time for your use. We do post all our webinars there on all different topics. And we are constantly working on updating those resources with our research board. Mentor is a unifying champion for mentoring and a thought and practice leader. So we do a lot of support of mentoring across the country. We have 24 state and local affiliates. So let's learn a little bit about all of you. We're going to launch a couple of polls. So we can launch those now. And we have 2 questions for you. What is your role in mentoring currently? You may have multiple roles, but if you could choose your primary role. And are the youth you mentor currently impacted by community violence? And we'll see the results from those answers. So we can launch those results. Yeah, so we have a range of people in the room. About half of you are program staff. Lots of you are mentors, some mentees. This is great. Thank you so much for joining us today, everybody. And yes, 85% of you are saying that the youth you mentor are currently impacted by community violence. So we're really hoping that today's conversation is supportive, helpful, and yeah, we look forward to your feedback on it also, your continued communication on this topic. So I am so honored to introduce Kim Smith. Kim is the Director of Programs at the Crime and Education Labs, where she works across a portfolio of research projects in close partnership with government agencies and local nonprofits. Her work includes research on innovative approaches for improving academic outcomes and reducing both violence and the harms of the criminal justice system. Thank you so much, Kim, and I'll give it over to you to start us off with some context and background.
Thank you, Martha. Is everyone, I'm assuming everyone can hear me. As Martha said, I'm Kim Smith. I work at the University of Chicago Crime Lab and Education Lab, and I'm going to give very brief background and context about today's conversation. We have such an amazing lineup of speakers. I don't want to take up too much time. So we can go to the next slide. So to start, a bit of background about the University of Chicago Crime Lab. We are a nonprofit research organization dedicated to working to improve the public sector's response to the dual crises of gun violence and the broken criminal justice system. And we do that by designing, testing, and implementing innovative programs and policies that generate evidence about how to make government more effective at solving these overlapping and systemic challenges. Next slide. Over the past few years, I don't think this is news to anyone on the call, but rates of gun violence specifically have increased around the country, further increasing the safety gap that has already existed for years between communities along both racial and socioeconomic lines. The primary policy lever that we as a country have relied upon when a spike like this occurs is law enforcement. But we know that law enforcement strategies like policing and incarceration are socially costly and impose harms on the very communities that are already bearing the brunt of gun violence in the first place, young Black and brown men. Next slide. And we think in considering the punitive or in considering less punitive approaches to gun violence, it's really important that we are clear about the proximate causes of gun violence. And some of the analysis that we've done in Chicago and others have done over the years has suggested that arguments or words are the primary circumstance that leads to shootings and murders. And I share this insight because I think it's surprising to a lot of people that we talk to who may otherwise think that gun violence is driven by wars between gangs or over drug selling turf. But what we see in Chicago is 3/4 of the motives of homicides are actually due to altercations or arguments. Another data point, if we go to the next slide, several years ago, this quote is from a staff supervisor in Chicago's Juvenile Detention Center. He shared that from his perspective, many of the young people in his custody were there because they made an in-the-moment bad decision during a very difficult situation. And he said, if I could give you back just 10 minutes of your lives, none of you would be here. And I share this because it, again, has implications for how we think about preventing gun violence and highlights the promise of non-policing programs that can help prevent arguments from spiraling out of control in the first place. Next slide. So today we will hear from experts in the field about why CVI programs, community violence intervention programs, and mentoring programs have emerged as a promising alternative to policing through a combination of relentless engagement and outreach by credible messengers, as well as cognitive behavioral supports and other clinical interventions. CVI programs and mentoring programs, we think, are a very promising alternative to relying on law enforcement to keep communities safe. And with that, I will transition to our first speaker, Dr. Chico Tillman. Dr. Chico Tillman currently serves as the Executive Director of Ready Chicago at Heartland Alliance and the Ready National Center for Safe Communities. He leads a team who provides strategic support, capacity building, technical assistance, and direct service in the community violence intervention space. Throughout his career, he has impacted thousands of lives and played a critical part in teaching and mentoring young African American adults, which is just one of the reasons why we are so happy to have him here today. Dr. Tillman, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Kim, for that warm introduction. Could you please go to the first slide? Ready Chicago, who we are. Ready Chicago is an organization that deal with individuals that are at the highest risk. We're hyper-focused on dealing with that, what we call the 1% of individuals who are the drivers of violence. We believe by relentless engagement and engaging these individuals in an intentional way, we can get them to potentially transition back into mainstream society and mitigate some of the risk factors that cause them to commit violence. Could you go to the next slide? This desire to create this program from Ready came about in 2016 when we had a large spike in violence in Chicago that, as you can see, it went from 485 homicides all the way up to 776. And this partnership between our president, Evelyn Diaz, and the crime lab came up with this idea of not just doing street outreach, which traditionally individuals do throughout the country and as a foundation of CVI, but we wanted to look at a way to get individuals into programming to change the way they made situational decisions that often led to violence. Could you go to the next slide, please? Another thing we understood is that when we think about the offenders, most of the people often want to work with youth, which is a good thing. We really understand the value of youth, working with youth. However, working with youth tends to bring back positive longitudinal success, but it doesn't really impact us near term. Because what we discovered is that the median age for violent offenders is about 27, and most of the programs that are available are geared toward youth, with there being a gap of about 58% for individuals that are actually involved in committing violent crime. Could you go to the next slide? In order to really do something that was impactful, we wanted to be really thoughtful and work in the early stage with our research partner to create something initially that would be evidence-informed or evidence-informed and could lead to being evidence-based. And with our research partner, which was the University of Chicago, we wanted to combine CBI, which would be a behavior modification mechanism, along with transitional jobs, which would be a sociogenic property to allow individuals not only to change the way they think about these conflicts, but also would give them some sociogenic properties so that they can not only change the way they think, but maintain this behavior and evolve back into mainstream society. Could you go to the next slide? One thing we learned rather quickly, and we've been able to discover after a few years, was how that participants experience Ready Chicago. When we started the randomized control, which has some challenges, because with a randomized control, we look not only at the individuals that entered the program, but the individuals that were not selected. So we started out with that. And what we observed that even to get individuals involved into the program, it took over a month, almost like a month and a half, to get individuals that's at the highest risk to actually commit to entering into the program. And we did this through relentless engagement, through knocking on doors, through calls and everything after these individuals were identified. After the individuals enrolled into the program, they were on this course that programming lasts for about 18 months. 18 months being the CBI, the jobs, and also the very, very important wraparound services would address individual needs of the individuals and was connected to a larger ecosystem where there was services that dealt with substance use disorder, mental health, and other services that we deemed that were necessary to allow these individuals to continue down this pathway to a pro-social lifestyle. After individuals exit the program, we still give them additional support for 6 months for sustainability. Could you do the next slide, please? There's 3 particular ways that individuals enter the READY program. One of the most important, of course, is community referrals. By us going out in the community and asking the communities who are the individuals that's at the highest risk, we often get referrals based upon our staff being from the community, but also their relationship with community members. Secondly, through our partners at the University of Chicago, we have what you call risk assessment referrals that identify individuals who've shown behaviors that have led to violence and identify individuals who have committed violent acts in the particular communities that we serve. And lastly, we work closely with the justice system to work with individuals on probation and also on parole. And now we've even started working with those individuals in pre-release so that individuals can work with us. We can work with individuals in pre-release and post-release. Next slide, please. One of the things that's astounding that we were able to notice, just by READY being in communities and working with these communities, we've seen a savings of about right around $185,000 per participant. When you think about in many cities, the cost of a homicide is roughly around $1 million. And that's conservative. By us interacting with individuals and other violent crimes going down, we save about $185,000 per participant. Save the city and also the country about 185 participants, depending upon which crime is committed, whether it's at the local level or the federal level. Could you go to the next slide, please? And now I want to introduce David Williams, Executive Vice President.
Thank you, Dr. Tillman. Thank you, Dr. Tillman. I will also just elaborate on David's bio. So having had the pleasure of working with him over the course of our time at the Crime Lab. So David Williams is the Vice President of the Midwest region at Youth Advocate Programs Incorporated. He is responsible for the day-to-day operations in Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, Ohio, and Kentucky. David has been with YAP for 14 years, and he was the first advocate in the Chicago area. He has also been instrumental in the Choose to Change program, which he will discuss today. Dave, off to you.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction, Kim. Who are we? Well, C2C is a combination of 2 great agencies. Youth Advocate Programs, been around 47 years. We're in 33 states. I am the executive director, executive vice president of the West region, and I'm responsible for 16 of those states. And our partners at Children Home and Aid, they're a longstanding child welfare agency in the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois. And they have a vast amount of experience delivering behavioral health services in communities in need and communities of color. In 2015, we were given an opportunity. We had partnered on another opportunity prior to this. And so we thought that the mixture of our strength-based wraparound approach and children's home and aids experience in serving, delivering behavioral health services in communities of color would be a great match in terms of designing a program. As Kim talked about earlier, many of our young people that we serve that are in the detention center, if they had 10, maybe 5 minutes of their lives back, maybe they wouldn't be in that position. So we came together and we thought that this would be a good model of merging these two types of intervention. And so we wanted to make sure that we gave all the students access and that this was an opportunity for us to come together and deliver our quality service. Next slide. And so how do we do this? Relentless engagement. We go out, knock on doors, make phone calls, engage with their peers. Fortunately, youth advocate programs have been in Chicago for 16 years, and we've established relationships with many young people in the community. And so sometimes the young people are our greatest salesmen. They sell the program to other young people that we've had a great fortune of serving in the past, and then that helps us give us an entree to the young person, build and establish trust, and establish a relationship. We also have our advocates, and our advocates are GED to PhD people from the community. We utilize zip code recruiting, where we identify people that are from those communities, or currently live there or previously lived there, and we do what we call a great match with the young people that we serve. We also give them the skills, working with our partners at CHA, Children's Home and Aid, how to make proper decisions. How do we prevent temporary situations becoming a permanent outcomes. And then we believe in a strong relationship. Our work at youth advocate programs and Children's Home and Aid is relationship driven. It's really important that you establish a quality relationship, and not only establish a quality relationship with the young person that we're serving, but it's important that we work with families. You cannot serve young people without engaging their families. And we ask, 4 principal questions. What do you need? How can we help? How can we work together as equal partners? And then how can you give back? Next slide. And so the students that C2C serves youth during the randomized control trial who are just as involved or disconnected from school. 21% of the young people that were involved in the randomized control trial were homeless. 37% had a prior arrest. 24% had an individual IEP, individual education plan. 30% had missed 30% of the school days in the prior year. 22% hadn't been enrolled in school, and 41% of the students were female. Next slide, please. On average, C2C participants have experienced high levels of trauma and exposure at the start of the program. 50% have been told about someone's killing or injury. 45% have been hurt or injured themselves. 40% have seen or heard someone being badly hurt, and 39% have seen someone dead or dying, or had watched or heard someone being killed. On average, C2C have experienced at least 7 traumatic events. Next slide, please. And C2C was part of a rigorous randomized control trial where we were able to identify some of the highest risk students that were in 5 various categories that had exposed to trauma, gang involvement, juvenile justice, had missed extended days of school, and had in-school behavioral challenges. And this program was offered through the randomized control trial for the control group, and then you had a treatment group. We were able to serve students from the ages of 13 to 18 who met that criteria. Next slide. And so C2C keeps you safe in the immediate and long term. And that's one of the great things. So many programs have greater impact and effect while the young people are being served in the program. but long-term, some of those results may fade out. But what we found in the work that we've done with C2C is that in the immediate, during the program, we had a 48% reduction in violent crime arrests, and a year and a half after the program ends, we still maintained a 38% reduction in violent crime arrests. And even after 2.5 years, after the program's end, 33% of our participants reduced the probability of any arrest. So I think that those are great outcomes. Next slide. In the education, we say to our students, we have an acronym that we use. It's called the BAG. So secure the bag. Secure the bag means behavior, attendance, and grades. So we want to have not only an impact on arrests, we want to have an impact on educational outcomes as well. And so part of that was the C2C. We were able to increase school attendance by 6%, and we also able to reduce in-school behavior. So behavior, attendance, grades. We are also able to reduce in-school misconducts by 33%. Next slide. Again, I think C2C has lasting program impacts. Some of our young people provided these quotes. They said, the influence and intelligent experience. He'd been there and done that. He'd been my age before, but I hadn't ever been his age. I'm trying to get there. So that's evidence that, one, that the relationship-driven work in terms of engagement with young people, identifying community members willing to provide advocacy. One component of advocacy is mentoring, but it's the relationship that drives, it's the shared experience, the familiarity with those communities that helps us have the impact that we have. Another comment from a young person out of the program, I learned how to walk away and not act out on everything and make permanent decisions on temporary situations. And many of our young people that we serve had situations via chronic stress in their communities, exposure to trauma, and they need the support to be able to process and be able to have an impact on their immediate behavior. And I think Choose to Change is a model. It's also not only helped us support the young people, but it's also informed our practice. It's made us better. Both agencies, we're currently now partnering with 4 CBOs here in Chicago that we are providing the training for the C2C model. Our partners at Children's Home and Aid are training the agencies on how to deliver sparks with the understanding of how to deliver those services in communities of color. And then, of course, Youth Advocacy Program continues to teach our strength-based approach in terms of engagement and relationship building with young people. So again, I'd like to just thank you for the opportunity to discuss C2C. If you have any follow-up questions, my information is available. Thank you. Next slide.
Thank you, Dave. I am going to now introduce Sarah and Allison. So Sarah London is a social worker with the Adolescent and Young Adult Medicine on the Behavioral Health team. She has experience in working with court-involved youth and their families to provide patient and healing-centered care. She is the lead social worker and violence prevention specialist on the Empowering Teens to Thrive program. And next, Allison is an adolescent medicine physician, violence prevention researcher, and director of the Empowering Teens to Thrive hospital-based intervention program and community-based mentoring program at the UPMC Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh. Her research and practice focuses on strengthening adolescent adult support networks to reduce violence, and I'm so excited to turn it over to Sarah and Allison to share a bit about what they are working on in Pittsburgh.
All right, thank you so much, Kim, for that introduction, and thank you for inviting our team to be part of this webinar today. Really grateful for the opportunity. I'm gonna kick our portion off with a brief discussion of the Empowering Teens to Thrive program and then turn it over to Sarah, Ms. Kiana, and talk a little bit more about the intersections between mentorship and community violence exposure in our program. So Empowering Teens to Thrive is a hospital-based violence intervention program wherein we provide wraparound support and individualized case management and linkage to services for young people in the aftermath of violent injuries or for young people who've been recently exposed to traumatic events. And so we care for teens who've been admitted to the Children's Hospital or seen in the emergency department or elsewhere across our practice network, as well as young people cared for in other community-based settings. And really the approach is intensive and individualized, where we as a program embedded within our Center for Adolescent and Young Adult Health are able to provide medical follow-up, behavioral health support embedded within our clinical practice, as well as linkage to many different community-based resources and working together with young people and families to really identify their individualized needs and goals and work to support coping and recovery in the aftermath of exposure to violence. And we've been really fortunate to work in close partnership with many organizations and agencies within the city of Pittsburgh. And so we work closely with the Allegheny County office, the Health Department's Office of Violence Prevention, with funding from a local foundation, the Heinz Endowment. And with that funding, we've been able to create a community-based mentorship program that's really focused on meeting the needs of young people in the aftermath of violence using healing-centered and trauma-informed approaches. And that's what we'll focus on today. More recently, our team was awarded a grant in partnership with the Department of Human Services here in our county through the Substance Use and Mental Health Services Administration as part of a funding project called Recast that's really designed to provide intensive support to communities in the aftermath of trauma and civil unrest. And with those funds, we now have the opportunity to scale up the work that we're doing and to do more formal evaluation, specifically of the ET3 mentorship component. I'm so really excited to get that underway. And with that, I will turn it over to Sarah and go to the next slide, Martha. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Allison and Kim, for our introductions. So really exactly what Allison just mentioned, what we'll be discussing today is our approaches to mentoring and how we've been able to successfully serve the young people that either are survivors of community violence, have witnessed this, or in exchange, really maybe at risk for community violence, and that we're able to work with them through our program. So our team basically combines and marries both mentorship and mental health support in order to enable people to feel comfortable and in control, work with this like tailored idea of one-on-one and individual mentoring, and really just empower the young people we get to work with to set some goals for themselves. You can go to the next slide, thanks. So what does it look like when a mentee is experiencing a mental health challenge? So obviously there's a lot of words on this slide. We're not going to go through all of these, but I wanted to mention these 4 categories today, really to bring forth the idea that there are always things lying beneath the surface for young people beyond their actions. And that's really what we work with our mentors on and train them to do, even though a lot of them come to us with this idea already, but really being able to spread that in the communities that they work with, that the young people that come to us who maybe are experiencing like behavioral issues or anger problems, that there's always things beneath the surface, which could be trauma, could be grief, depression, or even anxiety, and they're just not able to put a word to it. The other thing that I want to mention is that really when young people work with our team, nobody is required to have any sort of mental health diagnosis in order to receive that connection that we enjoy giving and enjoy engaging young people with. So these are just examples of what could lie beneath the surface, but it's not the same for everyone. But we often work to create a safe space where we can talk through these mental health challenges if that's what young people are experiencing. And so these are, on this next slide, I have a few modalities of what we work with and teach our mentors as far as some simple ways to help a mentee to really ground themselves, calm themselves down and work through a really stressful moment to really give them that control back for their problem solving skills. We know that when we work in spaces, even us as adults, right? And our brains are clouded and we feel anxious or whatever else is going on, it's really difficult to focus and problem solve. And so being able to engage a mentee in one of these techniques could be helpful in helping them problem solve and interrupt any sort of maybe violence that they could act on, or help them recover from violence that they might have experienced. And at the bottom, we always want to mention and talk about how to treat and work with young people and their families after a death or traumatic event, and really just make sure that their basic needs are being met. And so that's one less thing that they have to worry about. And that's what our program works to do as well. So I'll take you through very briefly each one of these points, as these are our approaches and ways that we've found it to be helpful and beneficial to the young people and the families that we get to work with. And so engaging through motivational interviewing, using this trauma-informed, healing-centered engagement approach, and then as we build rapport with mentees and their support system, how that's overall beneficial to them. So obviously motivational interviewing has been proven to be helpful in helping young people change behavior, right? However, we really put an equity lens to this approach, as we want to make sure that when we are doing this, there's no end goal for us. It's not benefiting us. We're really encouraging the young person to come to their own conclusion and supporting them along that way of whatever their goal wants to be. And really engaging them to teach them problem solving, assess some barriers, and not judge them for whatever it is that they're looking for help with. It creates really their own reason for change. It's not based on what our agenda is. So our modality of this healing-centered engagement, trauma-informed lens, as some people might have called it as well, really just comes from a place that we approach every situation and every young person and family that we work with, understanding that everyone experiences some degree of trauma in their lives. And really our goal is not to get them to disclose that trauma or to have a reason to work with us, right? It's really about empowering them to start their healing process, however that looks to them. And again, supporting them along that journey, and being able to gain that trust and understand that it is important to gain trust from people instead of just assuming and taking that for granted. And really focusing in on obviously a young person's strengths and addressing what's at risk in a way that makes them feel comfortable and helps them through that situation. But overall, the idea is that disclosure is never the key, and we're not looking to gatekeep any of our resources or our program. We're really just here to provide that support, however that may look, and help that young person and their family begin their healing journey. And so I also now get the honor to introduce some of our mentors that have joined us today for this webinar. Our first being Miss Kiana Blankenship. I'm going to go ahead and pull up her bio. So Kiana Blankenship is one of our wonderful mentors with the Empowering Teens to Thrive program. She supports youth and their families in their community who have been impacted by violence to provide emotional support or assist in getting them connected to the support they deserve. She's a mother of 14 and works hard to make sure that her children carry out the love and compassion that she admits. Kiana is in the process of continuing her education so she can promote more effective change on a different level. I also get to introduce Miss Laurice Harper, also known as Miss Lala with our program. Miss Lala is one of our powerful mentors as well with our program. She's worked with children through our McKeesport school system near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for many years. Mentoring comes naturally to her, and she extends her loving nature to all of the young men and women that she gets to work with in our community to create a safe environment for them to feel supported as well as feel loved. And so I'm going to turn it over to them to talk a little bit about this specific modality and approach that we take with our families and young people we work with. But basically, the way that we have built this system, we've built it to be a family, and we've built it to extend that love that we admit to each other to the families that we get to work with as well. And really just taking that weight off of a mother's shoulders who maybe just had a young person or her child was shot, or a child of, you know, her friend also was involved in some form of violence, and how that may look. And so having a mentor to be able to reach out to and help problem solve that, and to help get connected to support they deserve as well, has been everything. So Ms. Kiana, can you tell us a specific example of how this has been helpful for you in your practice?
Yes. Hello, I'm Kiana Blankenship. I feel as though that this has been very helpful, especially dealing with the youth who has been through trauma or violence. It gives them a sense of security, knowing that they have support and someone who is genuinely able to listen to them and care about how they feel and what's going on. Unfortunately, the youth kind of feel like as adults, we don't hear what they're saying or don't care about how they feel or what's going on in the community, or we just don't understand. Being a mentor allows me to be a non-authority figure, to just give them the comfortability to be able to build that trust with an adult, to help them through things that they may not go to a parent for the simple fact of the repercussions or the punishment that may come for the wrong decisions that they have made or what they gotten themselves into. It allows us to be able to help them talk through issues, be a sounding board, help them weigh the pros and cons of situations, and exactly what stands for empowering them to make decisions and trust in themselves, to not only to help themselves, but to eventually to maybe be able to help a peer or a family member who is going through the same thing.
Thank you, Ms. Kiana. Ms. Lala, can you give us an example of your work and how it's been helpful to engage the whole support system?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting us into this space, and I'll just keep it very brief. I think what a lot of everyone has been saying is empowerment, and I think that is the most important thing when we're talking about our mentees, to allow them to know that their voice and their experience matters, instead of coming in as oftentimes that happens to them. People and systems come in and tell them what they need and what they should be doing. But just letting them know that we hear them, we see them, and we understand. People telling them that they understand, and without recognizing exactly that you don't have to understand everything that they have experienced. That's not why you're there. And we can't just go in making a blanket statement or blanket vision about what they have experienced. Just allow them to show up as they are, and for us to establish connections and hope.
Thank you, Ms. Law. Yes, beautifully said by both of them. Really just engaging the mentee themselves, building that rapport, building that trust with also their family as well, and being able to really powerfully engage that support system, talk with mom, talk with grandma, whoever the caregiver may be, work with dad, work with the school, and find out what the issue is at school, and be able to advocate for their mentee in that space as well. So that's really the ultimate goal, is whatever is best for that mentee that we're working with. That's what we're here to do. So again, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Sarah. And with that, we will transition to our panel discussion. So I will ask, I think everyone has already turned on their cameras, but I'll ask all the speakers to turn their cameras on so I can direct questions. I will also remind audience members that you can throw questions in the chat. So I already see one question there, but if there are other questions that have come up over the course of the presentations and the discussion, please feel free to enter it into the chat and we will do our best to get to it. So my first question will be for Ms. Lala and Ms. Kiana, as well as Dave. And you've already kind of touched on this, but can you share any recommendations you have for mentoring programs in the room today who want to know more about how to best support young people? And maybe Dave, I'll ask you to start.
Okay, well, I think the key component in engaging young people is asking we ask the 4 principal questions. What do you need? How can we help? And how can we work together? And I think that's really, really important to ask those questions. It's just like, if someone was doing some work at your house, you would want you as the customer, you would tell, okay, I need the room painted blue. And that would be your expectation. So whereas we are service providers, we should go to families and ask them what do they need and how do they want us to work with them to get their goals accomplished. So, and also give them voice.
Ms. Kiana?
Yes, I agree with the doctor, making sure that they have a voice, asking them what they want. But what I will add to that is being a mentor is being genuine, showing them who you are. Not necessarily, yes, be a friend. Show them that you care, meet them where they are. Being genuine and dedicated about helping them and not doing something for them, but giving them the tools and the resources so that they can help themselves.
Ms. Lala, anything you want to add about how the programs in the room can better support young people?
I just have to echo what was just said in the room. Just being genuine and being consistent. I think that is so important, being consistent and being genuine, because so oftentimes our mentees have been let down so many times in so many ways. The consistency is huge.
Absolutely. My next question will be for Dr. Tillman, Ms. Kiana, and Sarah. So we are talking about programs and specific strategies that can be implemented, but it would also be nice to hear about the kind of systemic forces at play that also lead to community violence and the role that mentoring programs can play in those systemic forces that lead to community violence. What steps can we take today towards prevention? And Dr. Tillman, I will start with you. Oh, you're on mute.
That's a great question, Kim, when we think about some of the systemic forces, and particularly in vulnerable communities. Because in many cases, not only the participants, but the service providers feel helpless in regards to some of the institutional situations in terms of violence, institutional violence, or some of the disinvestment in our most vulnerable communities. And the mentor or the programs play a huge role in helping them navigate through these particular situations and help them with situational decision-making, how to make decisions that aren't permanent that can result in consequences that can be detrimental. I think just helping them with the decision-making process through programs like we have at Ready in regards to CBI, but also connecting them with the proper resources to offset some of the challenges. It doesn't make the challenges go away. Some of the challenges can be just high doses of, one of the challenges would be because of the systemic oppression would be exposure to high doses of trauma. So what we would do is connect them to either clinicians, connect them to mental health services, connect them to therapists, but also connect them to other pathways or opportunities that will allow them to escape that environment and give them positive things to do that can incite them into a positive pathway down to and continue down to pro-social lifestyle.
Sarah, I'll turn to you next.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah, I mean, obviously echoing Dr. Tillman, as well as really focusing in on the systemic things that also occur in our school systems and being very intentional about working with our school systems to provide that support to them as throughout, right, the pandemic that we just experienced and whatnot, and really bringing it back to reminding them that, like, you can be a part of this prevention program, and here's how we can engage you. Let's really embed our program within our schools to work with them and really be able to feel that support from within as well for the young people.
Yes, I agree with the both of them. To add to that, I would say that yes, mentorships in these programs deter against that, for the simple fact of what Sarah was saying earlier as EP3, we are a family. For the children to see the community, the teachers, the doctors, the social workers, and everyone working together to make sure that they're safe, that they're happy, and that they're going to be the best person that they can be, is something that I feel as though that we can do that helps and fights that. Because at this period in time, it seems like all everyone does is fight and no one really works together. So to see us all working together on a unified front to make sure that they are engaging in healthy relationships with themselves and others also helps this.
Thank you. And I do want to maybe sprinkle in a few of the questions we're getting in from the audience. And I'll open this up to the group. So whoever would like to, please feel free to start answering this question. But I'm going to ask the question from Frank. What's the best way to assist staff or mentors who are themselves dealing with traumatic events?
I would take this question, if you don't mind, I'll answer first. Like I said, my team, Allison and Sarah, are wonderful. We meet on a weekly basis to touch base, to not only talk about what's going on with our mentees or other issues that we may be having, so that we can bounce ideas and suggestions and resources off of one another. But it is also a safe space for us as mentees and what we are dealing through and what we are going through. And that definitely helps me personally to be able to continue and be the best mentor that I can be.
I also, just to piggyback on what you said, was that I think receiving quality supervision, I think sitting down with your supervisors, going over cases, also if, exposure, when you really work in the community, you're going to see things. You need to have experienced staff to be able to walk you through those situations. I think a key component is also quality training, and also just observation. When you go out and you shadow quality staff, you kind of learn how to do this work. And then most importantly, you create a teamwork environment. I think teamwork environment, whereas the culture of your organization is focused on providing the highest quality services to the program participants, and really believing that is I think a key component of our work. But supporting one another is a key component. And I think having people that are really knowledgeable about the work is very important as well.
Allison, Sarah, and Ms. Lala, anything that you would like to add?
I can tie into some of the other questions that I've seen coming into the Q&A and the chat as well, around kind of professional development and payment and recognition. I think one of the pieces that's been really important to our team from the beginning is that we truly are a team, and we are a team of professional service providers. And as such, all members of our team are paid for all the work that they're doing. And so that includes all of the, not only mentorship hours of, one-on-one engagement, but a whole host of professional development trainings and opportunities that we do together as a team to really grow and enrich all of our skills. And so Sarah leads some of those. We also participate in many other different training opportunities, both locally and kind of nationally, to make sure that the work that we're doing is really aligned, as someone else mentioned, by sort of the best practices. And so a lot of the work that we do is aligned with the Health Alliance for Violence Intervention, or the HAVI model, around best practices for engaging with young people in the aftermath of violence or trauma, and that we are infusing many of those elements into our mentorship work, as well as teachings around trauma-informed care and healing-centered engagement, and making sure that all members of our team are truly part of our staff, and that's a key piece in making sure everyone who's often been doing this work for free for a really long time is truly recognized for the amazing leaderships and skills that they bring to this work.
Thank you. And you were able to hit on a few of the other questions that have come in. And Dr. Tillman, I'm going to direct this next question to you. I think it also touches on some of the themes coming through in the chat, which is about the kind of like role of parents and the impact of mentoring potentially in kind of like the familial household. So Ready Chicago obviously works with adults. It works with the men at the highest risk of violence involvement. But many of the participants have children. I think about a third of the participants in the Ready Chicago program were fathers. So can you talk about how supports for young people or supports for the parents of young people, how that does or doesn't kind of factor into the design of Ready?
It factors very much into the design of Ready, because we have to consider the exposure of the children to high doses of trauma, both directly and vicariously, because many of the children live in the same communities as the individuals who we service, who are in that 1% that are the drivers of violence. So we think about ways to get the children involved in programming that might be trauma-informed, that involve trauma-informed care principles, but also we think of outlets for the parents to avoid things like abuse, neglect. We often factor that also into our CBI, because we know that a lot of those characteristics can be transferable onto the child. And we don't want it to impact the child in a way that it becomes transgenerational, that now the child is exposed to high doses of trauma, and it shows up either in the school system, in the daycare, or the child picks on these particular habits, and it begins to continue this cycle of violence and harm. So we are very intentional about dealing with situations that the father can interact with the children, but also adding services or being connected to services that can help the child cope with these particular situations. I want to touch on one situation in particular. If you think about children, especially from 6 to 13 in elementary school, many of these individuals in Ready have been shot. Imagine a 6-year-old dealing with a parent or a father that's been shot, or being in a car where the car has been shot at. In many cases, we've talked and they say, my child was in the car and guys were shooting at the car. So we have to be very intentional about talking to the parents about getting their children into therapy, helping their children understand that these actions are not normal, that these are the things that shouldn't be happening in their life, and getting the parents to utilize this opportunity as a catalyst to have that epiphany to change their particular life. So it's very important that we factor in that most of the people that are in Ready are children. And lastly, I want to say, Kim, that the biggest challenge is many of these children suffer from, I don't want to use the word neglect, but the father either being system impacted. So it's a gap in time where there's been a connection, or the child feeling some type of abandonment. And we have to somehow help the participant in Ready develop tools to re-engage the child, to rebuild the relationship, because they were either system impact or because in many cases, it was the result of a child pregnancy, a teenage pregnancy. So those are many other challenges that we face and we encounter when dealing with individuals in our particular program. And I think that was an excellent question.
No, thank you for highlighting that, and also some of the both like intergenerational trauma challenges, and also like the broader systems at play that kind of contribute obviously to both like childhood and then adulthood trauma. So thank you so much. My next question will be for Sarah, Allison, Miss Lala, and Miss Kiana. Can you speak about how you incorporate healing-centered engagement into your mentoring and community-focused work, and what you believe that framework contributes?
Yeah, absolutely. So healing-centered engagement is a way that we build trust with the people that we work with, and take this non-judgmental and trauma-informed lens, if you will. And we do this by simply it's all about language and how we come off to people, right? I totally understand. I'm a white woman and I work with a lot of our Black and brown youth and Black and brown families. And I'm also part of a medical system, and that is another distrust that I hold. And so really being intentional about the language I use and the way that I connect with people is so important, and not coming at it from a lens, as I think Miss Alala had mentioned before, is not saying things like, oh, I understand and it's going to be okay. Those are not promises that I want to make. That's not fair to the people I get to work with. And so really being intentional about not gatekeeping resources, opening up conversations in a very informed way of saying like, hey, I'm here because I feel you deserve help. And what's happened to you is not fair. And let's work together if that's okay. And building this trust, like we mentioned before, I feel like our team has added even another layer to what healing and center engagement means, as through our mentors and through building trust with our mentors, we can get them connected to these higher level services that maybe they've missed out on because of access, because of transportation, and for so many other reasons, and get them connected to the support that they deserve through therapeutic support, through even just basic medical support as well. And so within that, I mean, there's in our larger deck of slides, there's actually a couple more bullet points that specify exactly how we take that approach, which I encourage you to look through, but that is just a big summary of how we get to build that into our program.
Thank you, Sarah. My next question may also be for Sarah, Allison, but I'll also ask Dave to chime in here as well. Do you use any evidence-based curricula in your mentoring programs? If so, what are they? And Dave, I'm thinking maybe of some of the Sparks curriculum that is used in Chicago. But yeah, could you talk about any of the kind of curricula and evidence-based materials that you use in your programs?
Yes, with C2C, we use the Sparks curriculum as a cognitive behavioral intervention for the young people that we serve. We also utilize Casey Life Skills, where we are also teaching, day-to-day life skills. But I believe that Sparks is a really important component in the way that it's delivered. I think our advocates, being a participant, having similar life experience as the young people that we serve, can help reinforce the key learnings that they learn in a session out in the community. So they'll have an opportunity to have real-time impact on the young people that they serve. And also what we've also discovered is that many of the young people, many of the staff that we serve, the advocates, have also had similar traumatic experiences and never really had the opportunity to have a good clinical intervention. So it's also another good thing for our staff as well, because they also get to learn those skills and also help our young people reinforce them in the community. So yes, that's a great opportunity.
And I can comment that with our program, it is not so much sort of application of a specific curricula, our work really draws upon that hospital-based violence intervention literature and program components in terms of working with young people in the aftermath of a traumatic experience, sitting down and talking about really detailed assessment of needs and coming up with an individualized list of goals, and then figuring out how we can make sure that we're mapping the services that we're linking with them with the tools, opportunities, skills that we're working on, such that we're moving closer to all those goals that they themselves and their families identify as the most crucial, and really working from this hierarchy of needs of addressing those most basic needs around safety, housing, food, security, et cetera, first, and then kind of working our way through less immediate needs towards those longer term goals. And then with the mentorship component, a lot of what we've been doing, as Sarah mentioned, is really informed by all of these different models around trauma-informed care, healing-centered engagement, and really working through this team-based model that's integrated and embedded both in community as well as in our medical clinic. And so we're able to sort of transcend those two spaces. But our hope is that as we kind of continue to build this program, and with our new grant funding, that this will ultimately become evidence-based, as we're trying to build that evidence base right now.
And I'm so sorry to say that we only have a couple minutes left, and I will try to get through as many of these questions as possible. But thank you both for kind of sharing the different approaches that you've taken. And I know, Dave, you've also, as part of the Choose to Change program, there's been a lot of modification to the curriculum. I know that's also the case with Ready Chicago. So, you know, being flexible and able to change the nature of the curriculum, I think is also a really important theme. As we're thinking about how to apply these methods to you know, different programs supporting youth. Maybe the next question I will ask Miss Kiana and Miss Lala. I'll tweak the last question that came through. What role does faith play in mentorship? And I'll add Dr. Tillman to this as well. Yeah, what role might faith play in mentorship programs?
I could go first. I think faith plays a huge role in it, because what it does, it gives you a core value system. And in many times when you talking to individuals and you're trying to prescribe a particular way of life, it can be some back and forth, and they often question some of the things you think they should do, or but faith, what it does, it allows you to have a moral compass, even when the individual isn't around, they don't quite understand the circumstances, and it'll allow them to always have the right thing to do in front of them. And it's powerful too, in many cases too. And even, not to go off topic, my research around assistance, many of the individuals that I interviewed, that was the key catalyst that led to change. Some type of interaction with a faith, a belief system that allowed them to hold on and to believe. And I think the last thing I want to say, Kim, because of the despair in many vulnerable communities with the people that we serve, you need faith to see the light with all the things surrounding you. So it's an integral part in helping the individual move forward and change that that ideology around despair.
Miss Kiana and Miss Lala, do you want to add anything?
Yes, I agree that having a faith is very detrimental. Just like the doctor said, you need core, you need morals and values. That is where most people learn and get that from. To have faith that things will get better, that things will change, that you will make it through. Because as long as you have a faith base and a good support system, you know that you will be able to make it through anything.
And I totally agree. Faith is the foundation. Faith is my foundation, and I try to, relay that in helping the youth see the hope beyond the circumstance. So I think faith is crucial.
Great, thank you. And I think we have time for maybe one more question, but I'm going to call an audible and just ask the panelists to share any reflections either to the questions that haven't yet been answered, or any additional thoughts you have just based off of the discussion. Maybe we'll just go around the room and everyone will have time for one last comment before we turn it back over to the mentor team. So I will start with Allison. What's your closing thought?
Yeah, I think, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be part of this conversation today. And I just say to all of us, including myself, who are on this call, who are joining from positions of privilege and power, at universities or organizations that have the opportunity to fund this work, it's so critically important that we make equity first and foremost at the center of everything that we're doing, and that we include young people and community in all the work that we're doing from the moment that we start, such that everything that we're doing really needs to be set up to use the resources and the opportunities that we have, and to share those and use them as to meet the needs and goals of communities. And so for those who are in those positions who are joining today, I ask that you join us in that work, and that everyone who is in a different position continue to hold us to account to make sure that that's happening on behalf of young people and communities.
Sarah, Ms. Lala, go ahead.
Okay. I just saw something in the chat and it just made me want to speak on just in my closing, from the African proverb that it takes a village to raise a child. I think that is so true, but it also takes a healthy village to raise a child. And I think that part is so key, that we have to be willing to foster all components of the youth and help break down the barriers of thinking that mental health is something that we don't talk about, that we don't address in the African American community. So I think it is so important in these settings, and like Kiana said, and Miss Allison, Dr. Allison and Miss Sarah, that we are a family, and we talk about all aspects of embracing and just helping to the youth to be healthy, and the whole community and the family and all components. So I think that is so key, the healthy village.
Absolutely. Visala, I'm so glad that you said that, because you stole my words. But absolutely, yes, a healthy village is what we're striving for, and to break through some of these systemic things that we see in our communities and see in our schools, and really work towards this end goal that we want everyone to be successful and to strive. And that's hard work, and being able to share that burden of that hard work with the young people that we get to serve and the families that we're working with, so that they don't feel like the load is 100% on their shoulders. And one of my biggest reflections with all of this is, it sounds like that's all of our goals here, and all of our work is to take some of that burden off of the back of parenting this maybe a really difficult situation or a really scary situation, and be able to instill that hope and that faith back in that family.
Ms. Kiana.
I would like to leave where we'll say thank you all for everyone who attended and everyone who shared, and all the programs and resources. I wanted to speak again to what Mitch said in the chat earlier, that everyone is a mentor. It is just about, I love to say, and I even teach it to the youth, it is each one teach one. We are all obligated to, when we learn something, to teach that and pass it down, and definitely to our youth, because they are our future and they are the ones who are going to be running this when we are gone. So please be mindful of that. And yes, average Joes, don't think that being a mentor, you cannot be that. Everyone is a mentor in our own way. And once upon a time, we were all children and we were all looking for support. So be that support and be that person that you would have wanted.
Thank you. I love that. Each one teach one. And I know that's something I've heard Dave say before as well. So I'm going to ask Dave to go next.
Well, I think, the key component of our work, and I want to just thank you for the opportunity to be here today. But I think a real important component is not only do we work with the young people that we serve, but we work with their families. So we take a holistic approach to serving young people and their families. I think that it's another component. So mentorship is part of advocacy. So we provide mentorship, guidance, and support, but also advocacy. So there are systemic barriers that affect our communities. And it's important that we will not only work with the young people, we work with our city legislators, city, local, state, and federal government in terms of empowering and getting the resources to our communities that our families need in order to help themselves. We should be a lightning rod to and give them the voice. Because what I've found is when you have program participants or former program participants talk about their experience and go to legislators and really voice what the needs are, and it's very impactful. So I think that's the way that we always talk about the 4 principal questions, but the last one is giving back and how you can empower your families and the young people that you serve to give back to the community and share their voice and what they really need in their neighborhoods and their communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Tillman, can you close us out?
Yeah, as somebody who has been system impacted, somebody who has lived their life in a vulnerable community, I believe one of the most important things or most important components that helped me achieve the level of success that I've achieved has been a mentor. And when I think of a mentor, I think of somebody that provides access, wisdom, guidance, but yet compassion. They acknowledge how difficult it is for me on this journey, whether it's getting back into mainstream society, matriculating into different institutions or different spaces, but encourages me along the way. But lastly, the most important thing my mentor has did, he understands everything I'm going through, but will not under any circumstances accept mediocrity or excuses for failure, but encourage me along the way. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think I'm exaggerating by saying that, you all, I would love for you all to be my mentor. I am just so inspired, both by what you shared today and also the hard work that I know you're doing to keep young people and residents around the country safe. So thank you so much. And with that, I will turn it back over, I think, to Martha to wrap up.
Thank you so much, Kim. And thank you so much to all of you. The wisdom in this conversation is just unmatchable. And we just wanted to share a few more resources with everyone on this call before you leave. LISC shared a group of resources under the Community Violence Intervention and Prevention Initiative. LISC does a lot of work to direct investment in housing, safety, health, education. So I believe James Stark from LISC is on this webinar, and we'll drop these links. These are some more resources to just kind of add on to the resources for today. So these links will be in the chat, and you'll also receive, again, you'll receive all these slides with these links attached in the next week. So you'll be able to access this from here. We did want to just remind you all on this call that you can always reach out to the National Mentoring Resource Center and request technical assistance. So we have mentors who are technical assistants stationed across the country, and we can connect you and your program directly to them, and they'll work with you on specific challenges or questions that you have as you're building a program or changing a program or solving anything you're dealing with in your mentoring program. So thank you again. Thank you so much to this group of people, Kiana, Sarah, David, Dr. Chico, Allison, Laurice, Kim. Thank you so much. We hope to have further conversations like this, and we really appreciate all of your wisdom, all your sharing, all your resources, all your generosity. And thank you to everyone who's attended today. We will be in touch with all of you, and we are going to just throw a survey into the chat. We really do take the feedback on these webinars seriously from all of our attendees, and we often design our topics around your feedback. So if you can take a minute to complete the survey, we'll also be sending the survey link out through the email if you don't have time today. But thank you so much, everyone.